In part 2, we talk about the NFL and Lester's passion for the Montreal Canadiens.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Well, that's, because I get to follow you a bit on Facebook, so, I get to see the pictures and I'm always asking whenever I see them, right? Because you see it every now and when you do see each other.
Yeah.
And you see the shows and the gigs and the pictures from those shows and those gigs. I don't know how you do it, first and foremost. I always bug him about how, you manage a career like music and then working in an environment of sports, where it's demanding on your time, and quite often it's a prime time sport, or prime time gig, right, job, and weekends, and that's when you're performing, as much as you do.
Yeah,
it's got to be a tough thing to manage.
It is from time to time, but I will say that I've been doing this for a long time. I've been with TSN since 1995. And once you get into a routine, you get into a groove, and you know what you have to do to make it work. And I will say, I talked about technology in music and maybe not being so good. I will say this, technology in sports is a very good thing, especially in broadcasting, because sometimes I'll get home and I'm like, okay, let's do a little bit of scheduling. Let's answer some emails, whatever. I can do it from home too, right? So, I have to balance the time, and I do the best I can during the day in the office to make it 100%. But if I don't do it, like for example, Sunday, I spend some time at home just working on the schedule, getting some things together, thinking about it. So it's good.
So a crazy busy schedule, recording and performing, working, 8 hours at least. Monday to Friday, and then hours at home as well. It doesn't leave a lot of time for Lester the fan.
Well,
or does it? You get your. We're going to get into that.
I get my fix. I will say that my number one sport that I follow, that I can't follow right now, is hockey.
Right.
But I do watch my games and I keep up. I just do. Because again, it's like I said, I want to be a musician. I want to be in broadcasting, so I make sure that I do it. I'm fortunate in the sense that I don't have any children, because that would change. I'm not to say I'm fortunate. You know what I mean? Listen, I don't have children to consider at this point, so that's good. It does help, no question. Sure. I couldn't imagine doing what I'm doing with 1 or 2 children, or more than that.
Yeah, especially as they get a little older, get a little more active.
Well, that's it. And then all of a sudden, you're going to piano lessons or ballet or hockey or t-ball or something like that. So.
Now, really quickly, the hot topic today, sports-wise, has been the fiasco in Seattle last night.
Fiasco is exactly the word you should use.
The reffing job or lack thereof last night. You were on Twitter today chirping a bit about it, right?
You know what? I will say what I said on Twitter. This situation, particularly with the one ref saying touchdown and the other ref saying no good, this reminds me of Dave and Earl Hebner in wrestling when Andre the Giant first beat Hulk Hogan for the title. I think it was back in 87, if I'm not mistaken, or 86, 87. And, it's ridiculous. It shouldn't have happened. It just looks, how is it that a professional sport that is so highly regarded as the NFL, is putting their players, their fans, and their league in such a ridiculous situation because they won't come to terms with the referees? It is absurd.
And it's not even a lot of money they're asking.
It's not a lot of money they're asking, and I think, again, we come back to that word integrity. I think they have significantly damaged the integrity of that logo because they will not address this. This is not good. What happened last night is a fiasco, and it's not sports news, it's mainstream news.
Right.
Everybody's talking about this.
Absolutely. You and I were talking about this before we turned this on here. We were downstairs and we were saying that ex-President Clinton was asked about it today on a morning show. Obama's chimed in on it. It's on CNN. It's everywhere. It's hit mainstream.
Absolutely.
It's going to be on. It's going to be on. It's going to be on Letterman. It's going to be on Leno. It's going to be everywhere now.
Oh, listen. There's and again, that picture in particular, the one ref saying no and the other ref saying yes. That's going to get a lot of mileage.
Well, the one thing I noticed last night, I don't know if you two noticed it either. It looked like the one ref. They looked at one another, and when the one ref put his hand up to wave it off, the other one looked like he thought, that guy's putting up his arms and making a touchdown, and I think they got confused. If you do a replay on it and you watch it, that's what it looks like.
Well, nevertheless, they clearly got their signals crossed. Clearly got their signals crossed. Even if they had sort of consulted with each other before they did anything, that would have been a lot better.
Well, and this is the other point of this, right, is the head referee.
Mm-hmm.
I've been hearing all day today that proper protocol, before he runs under the hood, when he gets buzzed on this beeper, he is supposed to go down to check out with those two officials and ask them both, what did you see, what did you see, how strong is your opinion, how strong is your opinion, then go into the hood and make his call. Everyone is saying he didn't do that. He went straight from wherever he was down the field where the ball was thrown based on the line of scrimmage, because he's back that way, went straight to the hood, and they told him, touchdown.
Well, you know why that is? Because he's not a real referee.
No.
He's not a real referee.
No.
And you know, listen, for the amount of, I mean, never mind the underground money that's going around in the NFL. For the amount of money that's going on in terms of networks, in terms of sponsorships, in terms of gate revenues, salaries, everything, it just has to be better than it was last night. And you said it. It was a fiasco. I'm disappointed. I'm not a huge NFL fan, but to look and see that, it's disappointing to me. And again, all for the sake of not, and this is my personal axe to grind, all for the sake of not wanting to properly compensate the people that are working for the league.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
You know, and I think it's a larger problem when, and you know, this is another thing. I think worldwide, if you look at big companies, nobody wants to pay their employees properly. Nobody wants to pay anymore. I don't understand how you have a company that wants to do something, whether it's in your manufacturing, whether you're in service, supplying a service or something like that. Why wouldn't you want to treat your employees well? I don't understand that. But it's what happens.
I guess that's happening all over, right? I mean, that's
that's what I mean.
So you were saying it's not just the NFL. It seems to be a trend over the last 15 years where people used to look after their employees quite fairly. And to me, I think it's harmonious if you have your employees are happy, doing the best they can, your product level goes up, everything goes up, and everyone makes more money.
I think so too. But the problem, but I think that is why, personally, I feel that there's just an air of anger in our society right now. I think when you look back, even look at the Vancouver riots, I think that didn't come out of nowhere. I think that's a lot of anger by people. And I know we're talking about, you know, the summer of, I guess 2011 is when it happened last year, right? But I mean, you know, that was after the economic downturn of 2008. A lot of people are saying, listen, hold on a second, how come I'm not being taken care of for? You promised me if I went to school and I got an education and I could get a good job, and I'm getting out there, and even if I do get the job, I'm not getting taken care of. No. What's going on?
Well, and I think
what did I invest in?
That's an avenue where our leaders that we've chosen or who have run for office are almost pitting us against one another and not looking at the bigger picture of it, where they're looking at saying, oh, you're making this amount of money, you should be making that much money. Like they're competing against one another instead of the big picture where the big companies are bringing in record profits, and like they're letting go of people because they're able to make more money on the top end, right? Well, now, in saying that, the NHL lockout's going on. I think we're all fans here. Lester's a big fan of the Habs, and we got the Leafs fans.
You're a Leafs fan?
I'm a Leafs fan.
Well, I think we'll have to end this interview now.
But anyways, let's bring it to some money issue over there.
Walk us out, are you?
It looks like the NHL owners want to have their piece of the pie. They want to have the 57% that the NHL players have had, right? The NHL players are like, no, we're not giving you that, but we want to do more revenue sharing. Now, for two guys who are part of our fan club of the two major teams in the NHL,
I believe the Habs are third in revenue.
Okay, where do you stand on the NHL lockout right now?
Should I answer first, or should you
go ahead? Well, they've heard our fan base have heard my. Side of things,
you know what? I will say this. I think, first of all, the victims of this lockout are not the players, not the NHL, or not the league. It's people that work as ushers, people that work on all the sub economies. I'm a musician as well. I'm talking about, listen, I can't. These bars can't afford to hire my band anymore because they're not making money, because they're not getting people coming in to see. You know what I mean? Right? Like it's such a vicious cycle. Last time I would say that I was against the owners a little bit. Last time I thought they were being I thought they were both being greedy. I think this time when I look at it, you know, listen, they got the lockout they wanted last time. They got the salary cap they wanted last time. What's the issue now? You know, I'm not saying that I 100% agree with the players, but I think I'm more with the players this time than I was last time, for sure. You cannot be in a situation where Minnesota can afford to sign
2 major players,
Parise and Gary Suter, in a small market like that for $100 million each. Do not do that and tell me that you have a problem with the league.
Or even Nashville matching Philadelphia's offer
for Shea Weber. Yeah, exactly. Look. I mean, at some point, the owners have to take responsibility for the economics as well. And I understand there are cities, your Phoenix and other. I mentioned Phoenix in particular, but other cities. I mean, Buffalo's not doing very well right now. Apparently, I don't know. They just got that new owner, but still, their revenue's not that great. So sooner or later, he's going to have to look at the business and say, okay, what are we bringing in? What are we putting out? But I think this time, the owners have to sit down and say, okay, look, I don't think it's fair they're going after players again, and that's what they're doing.
Right. Now, everything I was hearing early on this summer from any of the experts out there was that there seemed to be this consensus going on that this thing was going to be quick. That once the regular season games started getting in trouble as far as being played, this would be settled. Now, recently, within the last week or so, I'm hearing more along the lines of this could be a really long lockout. Do you have a feeling yourself, Bob?
Yes, I do. I will say, first of all, I never believed there was going to be a lockout. I thought there's no way these guys are going to be dumb enough to lock out a year after you've had probably the most important Stanley Cup victory to the league in years, and that is the LA Kings. I think the LA Kings winning the Stanley Cup was big for California, one of the largest markets. Look how long they've been in the league, finally win the Cup. How can you turn down that momentum? That's what I thought.
Yeah. And that's riding on the wave of Blackhawks and
the Blackhawks.
Bruins.
Listen, this is. I mean, I personally think. I mean, say what you want about Gary Bettman, but what the league has done and the league post-lockout league is way better hockey than we've seen in a long time. And I've been much more. My brother, I talked about my brother before. My brother didn't watch hockey before the lockout. He turned his attention elsewhere. Maybe that's why he's on tour. But anyway, but he turned his attention elsewhere. Now he's not. The game's faster. They got rid of all the hooking and stuff like that. And you know what? They made it a much better game. So you're right. I mean, to look, let's see.
You had Chicago. You had Chicago.
I mean, you had Carolina in 06, 07 you had Anaheim, 08 Detroit, 9
and that's
Pittsburgh,
without any of the
10
guys.
Blackhawks, and then Boston finally winning, and now LA.
Yeah. That's a lot of. First of all, it's a lot of different teams.
Absolutely.
But there's some big U.S. markets there, traditional U.S. markets
absolutely.
as well.
And what do we have?
Small markets too. Right?
Yeah. What do we have before that? New Jersey, Detroit, Colorado,
and we win multiple
Dallas.
cups.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You think about it. Before that, there was only about 4 or 5 teams that won the cup in the space of about 11 or 12 years. That's ridiculous. That shouldn't happen. So, with the league being the way it is now, I think it's much more entertaining, and I think it's good that a team like, I'll put Columbus out there. Do I think they have a chance? Not necessarily. But you know what? In the time since the first lockout, they made the playoffs.
Yeah.
For the first time, huh?
Yeah. Isn't there a team that didn't make the playoffs, Brian?
Yes, I believe they're probably.
I figured I would get into a few
hold on a
questions.
second. Let's make sure we scope. Florida made it this year, so I think there was only one team left.
It might have been the Maple Leafs.
It was the Leafs.
Yeah.
It was the Leafs.
And
you know what? They probably brought in the most record profit as well.
I'm sure they did.
And the Jets, they haven't been there yet either.
Well.
Now, speaking of Toronto, and this is getting. I mean, we can talk about the NHL lockout. We're blue in the face, but you know what? Us three in this room are not going to fix this issue.
No.
In Toronto, we have had talk about playoffs missing. We all live in Toronto. No team has made the playoffs in 7, 8 years? No major team?
No. Don't forget the Toronto Rock, but yes,
they have a couple championships.
Yeah. The Rock has, and that's great. And
the Marlies. I mean,
and the Marlies,
major or not. I mean, that.
And we have. If you go on our website, we do Ryan's done a great job with the Rock, and he's done a great job with the Marlies. He keeps us up to date, so we're good on that. But in the major sports, if you look at the core major sports, what the Americans, I guess, look at it in terms of the major sports, we haven't made the playoffs.
No.
We are also looked at as a market that is a smaller market in the eyes who don't know our city. We're actually a major market, but we don't act like it.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a team you see on the rise, or is there a team in our area that you'd like to see progress? I mean, obviously you don't want to see the Leafs go further, but I mean,
don't say that because listen, I joke. Look, I joke, but the fact of the matter is, and I hate to say it, and I'm not trying to be spiteful, but I have not seen what it would be like to win a Stanley Cup in this city in my lifetime.
It'd be interesting.
It would be very interesting. I would like to see what it would be like. I will say this too, not to say that, I mean, we're approaching the 20-year anniversary of the Jays' first World Series in 92-93. Just so happens, for me, both times they won the World Series, I was in Kitchener-Waterloo.
Hilarious.
So I missed it.
Yeah.
I saw it on TV, but I didn't really experience it. So it's kind of a funny thing. It's just a little personal thing that I have. But which team would I like to see do it again?
Or even do it. I mean, if you consider that even the Raptors, who have been in the league now 16, 17 years, have made the playoffs, what? Twice? Three times?
Yeah, 3 times. Yeah, and that's a long time. That's a long time. And you know what?
And the fan base at some point has got to get tired of that, right? So
listen, I'll be honest with you, and I'm not trying to rag on your team, Ryan, but I don't understand how you could be a Leaf fan and not be just outraged by.
I am. I'm absolutely. I've been writing blogs the last little while about. The Toronto sports scene to me is depressing as hell.
Yeah, and I don't know what it is. I think really because of the Leaf drought and other droughts now, I think pro athletes that come here feel a lot more pressure to compete. I was talking with a colleague of mine a couple of weeks ago about this. He's a Leaf fan as well. Chris Versteeg. Chris Versteeg wins a cup with Chicago in 2010, signs as a free agent, comes to Toronto, doesn't play well, and is traded mid-season. I think he went to Philadelphia.
Florida.
They went to Philadelphia first, didn't
Philadelphia first, and then
they signed as a free agent in Florida, if I'm not mistaken, or was traded at the deadline or what. He's playing great hockey now.
He is.
And I think the stigma of the pressure of Toronto, or we haven't won a cup in such a long time, I think it affects players. How many times, even back in the day, Lanny McDonald left Toronto, was an all-star, captain of the Colorado Rockies, then the Flames, and finally wins his cup in that '89 with Calgary. There's stories like that. Laurie Boschman, current coach of the Leafs right now, Randy Carlyle. Randy Carlyle had a decent career in Toronto, but I can't remember where he went after that. But he was great. Joel Quenneville, same thing. Left Toronto, beautiful career in St. Louis. Now has gone on, of course, is a Stanley Cup winning coach. So I just think that there's something about being in Toronto that gets into the head of pro athletes. We put a lot of pressure on them. They make a lot of money, but we still do. But I think it's a stigma in Toronto. I'm convinced now that that's what happens.
It probably is. And to add on to your point, I mean, saying people who don't know this market, we are a large media market. We are a hotbed of media. We have just as much media as probably Chicago would, or LA and New York are separate beasts.
Especially when it comes to hockey, right?
But we have, I mean, you look at hockey or anything. You go to a Blue Jay game or you go to a Raptor game. There is copious amounts of media attention on all the players there. It's just not like a small market. It's like these guys are on. They're asking questions. They want answers. They want the team to do well.
Absolutely.
And as we know, Bell and Rogers in our area has bought most of these teams now. It's in their best interest for them to win.
For sure. To answer your specific question about which team would I like to see get to a championship, first, I would love the Argos to make the Grey Cup this year here in Toronto, 100th Grey Cup anniversary. I think that'd be fantastic.
It would be great for the city.
Now, of course, having said that, we just found out today that Ricky Ray is injured. He's got a strained knee ligament, so he's not going to play against Winnipeg. The bad news is he's hurt. The good thing is that the next game is against Winnipeg.
Right.
So.
Right.
Well, Guy Pearce coming back.
Well, and the good thing is that knee injury is, for the Argo fans out there, he's not. It sounds like it's not a serious injury. He's listed as day to day. He's not going to play this Saturday.
Which I think is the right call. Hold him up for a game. I joke about Winnipeg, but it's not good for the league that Winnipeg has struggled as they did. I mean, they have been blown out twice this year, 52-0 by Saskatchewan. I think Calgary beat them like 49-3 or something like that. So
their plus-minus ratio is horrible.
No, it's terrible. It's terrible. But I would, again, to get back to the Argos, I would love to see them return to prominence. I mean, it wasn't that long ago. I mean, 2004 was their last Grey Cup. So to see them get back there would be really good. They've got a chance. They're challenging for the Eastern Division lead right now. So
Montreal looks like they can be beat this year. I mean, they've been unbeatable in the East for a few seasons now, right?
Oh, agreed. I think unfortunately, listen, I love Calvillo and what he's done at his age in particular is amazing, especially in the last couple of years.
Well, even dealing with the cancer in his throat, and then he continued to play through
absolutely, thyroid cancer and everything. But he's come back and he's great. But listen, I think he's vulnerable. There's no doubt about it. So.
Well, and we were talking a bit about, going back to the hockey a bit, but also with the CFL. When we look at the CFL, there's talk always of expansion in the CFL.
Mm-hmm.
We just got the Jets back in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
The Vancouver Grizzlies, there's always a few rumors about another NBA franchise in this country.
Right.
Where do you work in the industry, sports media in Canada, obviously. Where do you see this market, like the market of Toronto or the market of Canada, going in pro sports? We're seeing TFC and Montreal Impact and the Vancouver Whitecaps have expanded. The National Lacrosse League has expanded in this country. They're all talking about more expansion. Do you see more pro franchises, sort of the traditional North American franchises, or do you see more or less the MLS kind of thing growing more in this country?
You know what? That's a good question, and I go back to my comments about the lockout. I think the lockout and getting that cap system is directly responsible for Winnipeg being able to come back in Canada. And I remember the day of the lockout ending, I was very excited about the prospect of that. I think it's possible that there's going to be another team in Quebec in the next 5 years. Do I see it on a larger pro level? Not necessarily. I think the MLS is the right way to go. They're talking about Ottawa coming back to the CFL. I think that would be great if if they can provide, number one, a stable fan base, a great building. Like they're going to be rebuilding the stadium or getting a new stadium. That's good. I would love to see the league expand out to Nova Scotia.
That was my point. Was the East Coast is forever neglected.
Absolutely. I mean, they've done a couple of touchdown Atlantic games there, but look at St. FX. Look at the great football program they have there. I think that Nova Scotia and specifically Halifax could support a football team.
I think I've been sort of the same mind the last few years. I think they can draw enough from the rest of the provinces out there as well.
Right.
As well as I think from some of the northeastern states there as well that are.
I think the key for any, when we talk about the CFL in particular, look at what Montreal did. Montreal was playing the Big O, number one, way outside of the city. Number two, a huge old building. Yeah. What did they do? They went to Molson Park. It's smaller, but you know what? They've created a very homegrown, down-home community vibe there, which is great, So,
and I think that's what the Argos lack at the Rogers Center.
Well, I agree, and in fact,
World
School. I would say that one of the crucial mistakes that the franchise made is not taking that deal. They were going to go to Varsity Stadium.
Yeah.
That would have been awesome. I think you would have had a lot more interest in the Argos.
Yeah, a lot more.
And I think you would have also given a bump to the Varsity Blues. I mean, I think you can reestablish a connection with CIS football that way.
Absolutely. But, of course, really, at the end of the day, Monday ruled out. It's basically, Rogers Center didn't want them to leave, gave them a deal, said, look, stay, and, we won't charge you any rent. Basically.
Yeah.
How do you say
Which is a great deal. I mean, it'd be interesting now to see how it goes. I mean, they're the only big pro franchise outside of the Rock that are not owned by one of the two big media companies now, right? I mean, but they're a tenant in the one building.
Right.
So I keep wondering down the road, if that's going to be a purchase.
Well, it could be.
Now, speaking of new stadiums in this area, Markham seems to be talking about opening up their own arena. What do you think of the likelihood? We talked about Quebec City as a destination for the NHL. What do you think about the NHL coming for the second team in Markham?
It would be something. I mean, listen, I have no doubt in my mind that if they were granted a franchise, whether it was it better not be a new franchise. 30 teams is enough. If they relocate somebody and they can do it in Markham, I think that'd be a great idea. I think it would be very supportable, no question. If you look at that area, I have a friend of mine that lives in Stouffville, and she's a singer, and she's telling me her son's starting to play right now. But the amount of hype in Stouffville alone, which is quite a big community for hockey, is insane. So you take Stouffville and all the surrounding areas, Uxbridge, Yeah, that's a whole other community.
Oh,
Markham, of course, that could come
you're
in.
talking about east and west, because people in Brampton would be going, people in Oshawa and Whitby would. I mean, it's a little bit of a hub north of the city where you don't have to come all the way downtown.
I think it's definitely doable. I mean, what would block that? I mean, who would I feel sorry for? First of all, Hamilton. They've been begging for a franchise for years, and will never get one. It doesn't look like. Not only because of Toronto, but because of Buffalo. And I do get that. So I understand that. But I think, if the Leafs didn't oppose it, I think it's definitely sustainable for sure.
Well, and for those people who don't know, that the geographic specs of Toronto, the ACC where the Leafs play is right down on Lake Ontario, right down the south end of the city, and Markham is quite a ways north, in the north end of the city. So there's quite a bit of population that can get to that area easier than downtown.
Absolutely.
Easier than down to the ACC.
You consider even where the airport is in the location of it. 407 zip right over, and you're right. It's right off the 407 where they're talking about doing this arena.
And I wonder as well, when I would think about that, I mean, one of the things that does annoy me as a consumer is the cost of Leaf tickets.
Yeah.
Versus, I go to Montreal once a year to see a game, usually. Maybe not this year, but
hopefully.
Hopefully this year.
Maybe you're going to Montreal anyways, just not to see a game.
Well,
maybe an AHL game.
But I'll tell you, listen, it's Montreal is a wonderful venue. Bell Center's fantastic, and I find it fairly reasonable. To sit close to the glass, you're not killing yourself. It's not a paycheck, but it could be a paycheck.
In Toronto. Yeah. Well,
so I wonder what the price point will be in Hamilton, or not in Hamilton, in Markham, if they can.
They could see a huge swing, in fan base just on the price alone, just to prove a point to the Leafs.
Well, and imagine if it's a team, for instance, like Phoenix. I mean, if they moved up. I mean, Phoenix made it to the conference finals this year.
Yeah.
If a team's a legitimate playoff contender and the Leafs are where they remain right now as a non-playoff contender, what does that mean for the dynamics of the city? Like, oh, wait, this team's a playoff contender? I want tickets for that team.
And cheaper tickets,
yeah.
too.
Well, it's already happened in league history. Look at what the Islanders did to the New York Rangers. The Islanders came in well after the Rangers were there, and boom, 4 Stanley Cups, while the Rangers weren't even in contention. So, now, of course, Islanders since have sort of sunk back down.
Yeah.
But it's possible, and I would draw your attention to as well the fact that Ottawa came into the league in 1992, the new Senators, and they were in the Stanley Cup final in 2007. Meanwhile, the Leafs haven't been there since '67.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's not quite the same thing, but we're still talking about an Ontario team that's gone all the way, while the Leafs haven't.
And those years too with the Senators, when they had those big battles with the Leafs, the Senators were in contention for the President's Trophy every year too. So I mean,
absolutely.
They had that concept of being that great regular season team, struggled in the playoffs, but at least they were winning all season long and getting to the playoffs.
Absolutely. And,
well, I had a question for you. I mean, you were mentioning that you go to the one Habs game a year.
Mm-hmm.
This is going back to just your Habs fandom here, because I just wanted to make sure everyone knows exactly what Lester's all about when it comes to Habs.
Absolutely.
Forum?
The Forum, yes.
Or Bell Center?
Wow. You know what? When I realized they were going to close the Forum, I, by myself, went to Montreal for a preseason game in it would have been 1995. It was the only time they could go. I went and I saw Philadelphia and Montreal. And I'm telling you, when I walked into the Forum, I could feel it. I could feel the history of that building. It was incredible. It was incredible. And I one of the reasons I like classic is I'm a historian too. I like history. I think it's important we don't forget our heroes and our past and whatnot. But to walk into that building and know that this is where Guy Lafleur scored the goal in the 2-minute man in the ice game, to know where the Rocket built this building, to know that this is where Dryden and Cornwallis and Steve Schott and Patrick Waugh, all those guys,
all the legends,
were stars. I really felt an aura. So I would have to say, just as a history thing, the Forum. However, The Bella's beautiful. Hey, listen, you have to modernize, and
there's some great atmosphere in that building.
Yeah, and I'll say the same thing about Maple Leaf Gardens too. Mind you, my thing with Maple Leaf Gardens is more wrestling. I went to see several wrestling cards at Maple Leaf Gardens, but I'll never forget my first hockey game. My parents surprised me. They were supposed to be taking me for skating lessons, and my dad said, "You're not going to skating," and I said, "Why not?" I was really excited. I wanted to go, and he pulled the tickets out of his pocket.
Nice.
He said, "We're going to the Leaf game."
Oh,
I was crying. I was so happy.
That's pretty cool.
Little did I know the team would disappoint me.
Well,
okay, and you're still nicknamed Flash, so your skating hasn't.
That sort of leads me into another question about the Habs in particular.
Sure.
Montreal, Toronto. That's a big deal.
It is.
But before the Toronto Maple Leafs moved to the East, for a long time, the Bruins were the apparent #1 rival. But there's also a team called the Quebec Nordiques.
Oh my goodness!
For you, or I guess for both, I get both sides. But who do you feel is the rival for the Canadians, and who is your rival? It may be one and the same, but
you know what? By far, personally and professionally, Quebec Nordiques.
Yeah.
We just ran a game on the weekend on Classic. I had a whole series of games, and I call the weekend NHL Hockey's Rough. And the game in particular that I showed for Montreal was the 1984 Adams Division Final, Game 6.
Right.
There are 2 line balls in this game. One at the end of the second period, and one starts again as the players are skating around and start the third period.
Oh, God.
So the teams are sent off the ice twice in this game. Not before or since, the only other rivalry in the NHL to me that comes close to it is Detroit and Colorado.
Right.
For the intensity.
For the
in terms of the
90s.
That was the 96 hit on Draper by Lemieux. But to me, Montreal and the Nordiques, the Habs and Nordiques, for some reason, I mean, you can look. I mean, obviously the Nordiques were more French Canadian than Montreal was at the time. But still, I mean, I don't understand why they hated each other so much. But I think it was just, you're the team of Quebec, we are the team of Quebec. I don't think the Battle of Alberta had ever been as nasty as the Battle of Quebec.
No, eh?
No, I really don't.
Do you foresee that rivalry lighting back up where it left off if Quebec was to get a team, or is it going to take a while to build?
I honestly think it'll be back on in the first game
preseason
if it happens, because I think the fans will fuel it.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, even when Colorado comes to town to this day, you see the Nordique fan come out.
Yeah.
So
I love seeing those Nordique jerseys. I saw a guy today actually at the gas station in a Nordique T-shirt. I had to do a double take. I mean, I like the Nordiques. I used to. Again, I'm a history guy too. So
hey, listen, the Nordiques were a very good team. I mean, Joe Sakic, when he first started, Joe Sakic wore 88 on that team,
right,
for his number, and number 88 was rivaling 66 and 99 at the time. So
well, on that team right before they left. You go back and look at the players in that team. I mean, we know what they did in Colorado.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, my Lord, that was a great team.
Well, I like to play what if sometimes with history, and my question is, what if Quebec Nordiques stayed in Quebec for one more season, and Roy still has that blow-up with the Habs, and he gets traded to the Nordiques? Imagine.
Crosstown. Oh,
imagine. Imagine. And they go on to win the Cup, too.
Well, here's another question for you then. You mentioned Roy.
Yeah.
We need a one-word answer.
Okay.
Roy, Plant, or Dryden?
Roy, Plant, or Dryden. As far as who's the best of all time?
Or just most memorable for you, even.
You're not going to add in Price?
No. No.
Not yet. Not yet, unfortunately. Although he's been very good for the last season or two. Wow, that's a great question. For so many reasons. I mean, obviously, Plante was the backstop for those great '50s teams with Richard and later Bellevaux, and then you have Dryden. I mean, those 4 in a row. They won the '70s again. He was at the helm for all of those. Then Patrick Roy. I mean, statistically, he's probably the best Hab goalie of all time. I'm going to say, for sentimental reasons, I'm going to stay in the middle. I'm going to say Dryden.
Dryden.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Plus,
Well,
I've met both of them actually, Dryden and Waugh.
Oh yeah.
I'll say Dryden. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, what about the greatest Hab then? I mean, you've got your greatest goalie. Does he the greatest Hab, or do we go down to some of the guys that you mentioned?
You know what?
Shots.
There's three guys that stand out for me as Habs, greatest Habs. Lafleur, Beliveau, and Richard. But by far the most important is Richard. He built the form. I think without him excelling as he did and being so good, I think the fortunes of the franchise drastically changed. He's very important to that franchise. And I think the standard of excellence was raised because of him.
Right.
So I think that's your starting point was way up here. So that's why I think he's the
well.
best.
I would say we've never seen a riot over a player since, right?
No, we've seen a riot for teams losing in Game 7 games, but never for this. No,
well, and one more question. That line there
sure.
for you. Do you have a greatest moment in Habs history? Is there a moment, or do you have one, or is in some cases too? I mean, you look at Patrick Waugh. Is that the most significant point or part of Canadians' history is when Waugh left?
Well, I'll tell you what, for that era it was, because had he stayed, maybe you're looking, depending on, he was the cornerstone of the franchise. And, number one, everybody knows he wants to be traded. Number one, he knows he wants to leave. Number two, everybody knows he wants to leave, so what kind of deal was Régis Houle going to be able to make for him at the time? Everybody knows he wants to leave. Vince Carter, same thing in Toronto. Everybody knows he wants out. So what kind of deals is he going to be able to make for him? I think it was Rob Babcock at the time, if I'm not mistaken.
It was Rob Babcock. It was, 2 Williams.
It was terrible.
Crappy first round.
Oh, that's a hard question. Again,
you look back at that last Stanley Cup was fairly significant because of the overtime wins all year, all through the playoffs.
Yeah,
and those 5 in there's the game against Boston with the goal against Boston.
Oh yeah, Lafleur coming down. That's that. I would say that's probably the most famous goal in Habs history is that tying goal. And the too many men on the ice game. Lemaire drops it back to Lafleur. Lafleur shoots, scores, and then Yvon Lambert scores in overtime. Habs go on to win, and they beat. Again, the thing is, if you think about it at the time too, if the Habs lose to Boston, they probably go on and win the Cup in '79 because the Rangers were either Habs or Montreal would beat, or Habs or Bruins would have beaten the Rangers that year. I would say, you make a good point about those 10 Stanley Cup, 10 overtimes in a row. In '93, that by far, because if you think about Habs teams before it, they had a little bit of a surprise win in '86 versus Calgary, but again, Patrick Waugh came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
He came out of nowhere and he won it. And of course, there he was, Conn Smythe, right? So that team was good, and there's a lot of Hall of Famers on that team as well. Captain by Gainey. I think Robinson and Savard were still there. So you still had a pretty good core of the older guard. But if you think about '93, number one, the major thing that happened that year is the Islanders knocked off Pittsburgh. Shocked them in 7 games. David Bullock overtime.
Yeah.
So if you think about that and the fact that the Montreal did what they did in overtime, and they were down 2-0 in the series to Quebec.
Yeah.
Came back home and won the 4 straight to win that series, and the overtime started in that series right there. Swept Buffalo, beat the Islanders in 5 games, and then beat the Kings with Gretzky in 5 games.
Well,
so I think that's the year.
Okay. Well, that particular year too. If you look at the Captain Kirk Muller on that team, and you had him going on the one side of the chart, with the in the East. And you had Doug Gilmour going in the West, with 2 Kingston boys playing for the Leafs and the Habs. It looked like they were going to, collide at the end. And then, of course, there was a referee in the West who did some damage to the Leafs.
You know what? I will say this: people talk about the non-call, but you know what? Glenn Anderson took a very selfish penalty before to allow that power play to happen. That was to me. That was the series.
Right.
They still had another. They had another game. They had them on home ice to beat them. Could have beat them at home.
Yeah.
But the other thing about that series, I think, and if you ever see Bob, you can ask him about this, Bob McKenzie. But Bob McKenzie had written an article about Gretzky playing like he had a piano on his back and it woke him up.
Mm-hmm.
So you blame Bob McKenzie.
That's one of those players. I remember that. I remember the hype about that article.
Yeah.
I remember the hype of that article. And
They blew up.
Gretzky's one of those guys that, for me anyway, that if he was sleeping, you never wanted to poke the bear. You never wanted to wake him up.
Yeah, wake him up. Yeah. You know.
We've been going on for a while, so we probably should be wrapping this up shortly. But one article that we have coming up on our site that Ryan and I are planning getting up is now every city has athletes, but Toronto has the major athletes coming. So what we're going to do is we're going to go all around every major city, and we're going to say who's the best athlete coming from that city, and then compare them and have polls on our website, and people can vote on it. So you from Toronto, living in Toronto now, who is Toronto's best athlete today? Not of all time, just if you look at the major sports, you got Batista,
Today, yeah.
You got Encarnacion.
Quite frankly, he's the one that sticks out to me, Batista.
But I'll give you the options.
Okay, give me the options. Okay.
Batista, okay. You got Bargnani, probably. That might be the best rapper at this moment. That's, not saying a whole bunch. At least would say probably Fanuth.
I would not, but he is going to be a popular vote for best player.
I would look at Kelsall. I would also look at Joffrey Lupul, actually.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I go as far as Jake Gardner even on that team.
Jake Gardner's a very good defenseman.
Yeah.
I hope for your sake as well that Keith Ollie trade doesn't come back to bite you.
I miss Keith Ollie already.
So anyway.
So would you suggest that Batista is today's best Toronto athlete?
If I had to put a face on Toronto sports right now, it would be Jose Batista. Yes, I think he's the only guy in the last 10 years. No, I lied. In the last 5 years or so, that has been able to sort of take on that moniker. I would think before that, Matt Sundin. Before that, Pinball Clemens.
So
before that, Carlos Delgado. I'm just kidding.
I'm not feeling any love for Dougie Gilmore or Wendell Clark.
Well, he said right now, right?
Yeah,
right now.
Now, so my next follow-up question to that is, and you may not be able to answer this, so bear with me.
I'll do what I can.
Who do you see 5 years from now as being Toronto's athlete, assuming he's here in town already? Is it Morgan Riley, who the Leafs just drafted? Is it Kadri, who
Jake Gardner?
Is it Jake Gardner for the Leafs? Is it Valanciunas for the Raptors?
Lowry.
I was going to say Brett Lowry. He possibly could be it. I mean, I feel badly for the Jays that they haven't done anything this year, really. Lots of injuries. I mean, obviously you have Batista out. It's hard to say, though. I think, unfortunately, we talked about the Toronto sports scene. I really think that, unfortunately, we really haven't had a big star here, arguably, since Vince Carter. And I only say that, with all due respect to Sundin, I think basketball on a world stage is going to trump hockey, especially in the U.S. Right? If you think back to 2000 when Vince Carter won the slam dunk contest, people were going off about this guy and going off about Toronto and the Raptors, and they went on. I think in 2001, that's the first year they got in. They beat the Knicks.
Yeah.
Should have beat Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And they were actually on TV in the States.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'll do one rant. I'll not forget Vince Carter for two things. Number one, the way he left Toronto, and number two, going to his graduation in 2001. I think when the rest of your team sees you as the leader take off and do something personal, when you can graduate the next day or whatever, I think that put the team. That says to your team, I don't care.
That's true.
And again, we come back.
Well, that's been a knock on him for a long time. Is the individuality or the individual for him?
Absolutely. I think if they win, if he stays.
And I was going to say, obviously, passion for me is basketball. Imagine if McGrady and Carter stick on this team and what could have happened.
Absolutely. Bosch being drafted. I mean, they may not have been able to draft Bosch based on those two.
But if Bosch stayed and Canby stayed, all of a sudden you got a front court and you got a back court. All of a sudden, watch
this right? The thing. I don't understand how guys like when I look at LeBron even. I don't like how LeBron left Cleveland. I don't begrudge him. He had the right to do it. That's fine. But to me, I would think that as a guy that has the talent that LeBron has, that's from Cleveland, thinking big long term, man, imagine if I could bring a championship to Cleveland.
Absolutely.
I'd be set for life in this city, and maybe in other small towns too, because they say, hey, look, LeBron, he could have left, but he stayed.
Yeah, and he brought us.
And they took it. They went to the finals.
Yeah,
they lost 4 straight, but they went to the finals, so it was possible.
Well, and that move may have changed the face of the NBA as we know.
I think
because look at what they've done. All the superstars now are migrating to certain markets. Had he stayed, we don't know what the NBA would look like.
That's very true.
No, and then saying that, he might say that he's from Akron, by the way. That's what he would say to you if he was sitting across the table from you, right? Because he would be like, oh, I'm not from Cleveland, I'm from Akron, I hated people from Cleveland. I mean, that's just an unbelievable comment that he's made. So in that vein, and you may not know this player or not, but I mean, if basketball is the bigger sport and Laurie is your pick, would Valanciunas be a second pick to you? Because Valanciunas is supposed to be the next best thing in terms of a player.
Well, listen, I think when we see Valanciunas, what he brings to the table, then we'll have to be able to judge. I mean, listen, I think Phil Kessel's a tremendously talented hockey player. Mm-hmm. I think he's exciting to watch, and if I'm watching a Leaf game, I'm looking to see what he's going to do. But he is not a very personable individual. He's quiet. I don't really get a sense of who he is off the ice.
Yeah.
So all of that factors in. Go back to Vince Carter. Vince Carter had a swagger on the court, and he had a little bit of a swagger off the court as well.
Yeah.
That's what makes him marketable. I don't think Phil Kessel is as marketable as he could be. It's too bad. I don't hold that against him. I don't know, Ryan, you're a Leaf fan. Do you agree, disagree?
Oh, I agree. I don't think he's marketable in any way, shape, or form. I mean, this is a team, the Leafs forever, whether the players wanted to or not. You get down the last few years with Sundin, who was marketable in his own way. Gilmore, Clark, Gary Roberts, some of those players, Ty Domi. I mean, all those players, the Leafs have for years, even go back to Tiger Williams and Sittler and McDonald and those guys, they always had personalities. This is the one team in the last however many years, I don't see one of those personalities.
No, and it probably stems from the top when you look at Phaneuf. He's also a very dry...
Listen, I don't know the man, but I think he's totally the wrong choice for captain of the team. I think they have tried to sort of present him as the face of the franchise. We're going to be a tough... I think they're trying to make him look like Brian Burke Jr. And he does not have the leadership qualities I think he should have as a captain. I don't think he's personable. There's nothing about him that makes me attractive, that makes me want to be draws me to him. No, not at all.
That's what I mean.
And I think you're right. And I think you're right. And people see that and they go, "Well, this guy's our leader."
Yeah.
Burke is the face of the franchise, and that's
which is sad to say.
Hasn't happened in years.
Which is sad to say, because where else do you see a franchise and go? You don't look at in Pittsburgh and be like, "Oh, Ray Sherrill's the man."
No, you don't.
You look at it's Crosby, and if it's not Crosby, it's Malkin. If it's not Malkin, it's Letang. And if it's not Letang, it's Neal or it's Fleury. Because it's players first.
Absolutely.
In Toronto, it's a face is Burke, and if it's not Burke, it's probably the MLSE guys.
You see, that's been the scary thing for years on Toronto. Not to go on and on and on, is that there hasn't been a face of management for years and years and years because it's been the teachers union, whereas other organizations have had those owners. Even outside of hockey with Mark Cuban, that sort of thing. People associate the team outside of Dirk Nowitzki with Mark Cuban, whereas we for years have had only our players. We've only had the players. We haven't had an ownership a group that's accountable for all the years of crap. All of a sudden now Burke is that face, but there isn't a team to look at underneath him, in my opinion.
I will say this, and I don't wish this to happen, but I think if they come back and they play, and 20 games in they're doing poorly, he will be gone, Brian Burke.
Yeah.
And you have to understand. I mean, I love him as a personality. I've met him. He seemed very nice at the time when I met him, but I would say that he is on a very short leash. And you can look at John Ferguson Jr.'s record as general manager and say it's better than Brian Burke's at this point. That's not a good thing for a guy as experienced as Burke is.
And I'm not even sure their farm system, even though they did well last year, that doesn't, in terms of going to the American League Cup. I don't know if there's that many prospects there who are
not NHL stars.
One or two first line or second line players.
It's more the same players coming through.
I don't know. I don't get a sense. I mean, listen, even the Habs, I don't know if get a sense that they have a strong farm system, but the only team that seems to have a strong farm system is Detroit. Every time you turn around, they get some new guy that's fantastic. So, I don't know.
That's an organizational thing all the way.
Yes,
Top to bottom.
All right, so once again, Lester has a CD out, 4321, available on iTunes.
Yes.
He's got a website, LesterMcLean.com.
Yes.
Check him out. You can link him up. We've got him linked up as well as our site on onesecondleft.com.
Yes.
And he's on Twitter. He's on Facebook. Lester McLean at Lester McLean.
Thank you, by the way, for the interview. I didn't expect it to go this long, but it's been a blast. You got some great stories.
Well, thank you. I mean, I'm really happy that you guys are doing this. Number one, this to me is. I used to do this with really beginning at TSN.ca. Used to get guys together. We just chat for 5-10 minutes or so about sports and go from there. But this is great. I love what you're doing. I love your passion for sports. I love your passion for life, and it's an honor to be here as a guest. Thank you.
I hope we can do this again, actually. So.
Well, yeah, I'd love to do it again. All right, we do tomorrow.
All right, guys. So check Lester out, and we'll be back at you soon.
Your natural light will shine through. Your natural light will shine through. Yes, it will. Yes, it will. So sail upon the oceans and the seas. Feel the breeze upon your face. It's just natural.